RBI DEPR Phase-II result has been released, and the next step for you is to prepare for the interview. Interview preparation for RBI becomes even more important considering the high dispersion of marks awarded at the interview stage. For example, in recent past, you must have already heard of people who have scored 75 in the interview and also heard of people who have scored 0 at the interview stage. In this video, we will try to understand how to approach the interview preparation. Although this video has been made from the point of DEPR examination of RBI, but in my opinion, even if you are appearing for any other interview, this video will help you. So let's begin. So this is how we will go about in this video. First, we will discuss the qualities that the panelist may be looking for in the candidate. Next, we will discuss how can we go about preparing for this interview. We will discuss this under these headings. And then we will discuss how can we practice for interview. So let's begin with the first one. So in addition to the domain knowledge, the panelist will be looking for officer-like qualities in the candidates. To understand what are these officer-like qualities, think after selection, what work will you be required to do in the job? The work that you will be required to do gives us an indication of the qualities required in you. For example, this is the job of a research officer. So you will be required to write research papers. Accordingly, they can test your basic understanding of research methodology. For example, they can give you a situation and they can ask, if you were to conduct so and so study, how will you approach it? Next, you will be required to interact with the clients of RBI. For example, banks or financial institutions, union government, state governments, and even private firms. For example, many a times RBI hires private firms to do different surveys, and different times they also hire the services of different printers for printing their publications and for various other purposes. So to interact properly with them, you will need the quality of making formal conversation. Next, in this job, you will also have to handle many complex issues diplomatically. And to judge you on this parameter, the panelist may ask you some questions from your life choices and then judge how well you justify them. For example, some candidates may have a gap year. Now, having a gap year per se will not be a problem as long as we can justify it to the panel's satisfaction. So in short, please remember that this is a personality test, a test of our personality, what kind of person we are. Of course, knowledge is an important component of our personality, but it is not everything. And if they wanted to test only knowledge, they could have included another question in phase 1 and phase 2 itself. Interview was not even needed in that case. In fact, the method of testing knowledge will be different at interview stage as compared to what it was in the written examination. Because now, analysts have an option to cross-question you, and through cross-questioning, they can judge the depth of your knowledge on any topic. At this stage, you will also be required to use your knowledge to make inferences about various issues. And hence, at least some of the questions may be such that there are no correct answers. For example, opinion-based questions. If they ask a question such as, in your opinion, in the upcoming union budget, what are the 3 most important areas on which the government should focus? So this is an example of opinion-based question. It may not have any correct answer. They just want to see how well you use your knowledge to make inferences, and they may just want to see your thought process, and if there is any contradiction in your thought process, that they may try to judge using cross-questioning. Now let's go ahead and discuss how can we prepare for such an interview? While preparing for the interview, it is best if you can divide your preparation into different categories. We will follow these. First, biodata, then about RBI, then about contemporary issues, and at last, subject knowledge. So let's go ahead and discuss them one by one. So you are already filling your biodata, and through the information mentioned by you, they will try to get a peek into your personality. And to understand you and your decision making better, they might ask some questions from it. It may be related to the educational or professional choices that you have made so far in life, or if some candidates have a gap year, they might be questioned about it. They may also ask you, why do you want to join this job and not any other job? They may also quiz you about your present job and why do you want to quit your present job if you are working. Because the biodata forms such an important component of the interview process, we have to be very conscious while filling it. Of course, many of the required details are factual, so we do not have the scope to make changes to it. But at the same time, there are columns in the biodata form. There are things about our personal life where we can exercise the discretion and decide whether we want to mention it in the biodata form or not. Like I have already mentioned, anything that we can justify to the panel's satisfaction should not raise the red flag. Therefore, whatever we write in our biodata form, we have to be prepared for cross-question on each of those aspects. For example, consider the case of UGC NET or JRF. Any of you have qualified this examination and you will want to mention this in your biodata. At the same time, an immediate cross-question can be, if you are already NET qualified, then why do you not want to pursue a career in college teaching? In other words, अगर college teaching करना ही नहीं था, तो आपने NET किया ही क्यों था? Now, please do not misunderstand me at this point. I am not saying that you do not write this at all. Many candidates who were selected in previous years have written this, and even then they were selected. Not every candidate was even asked this question. So all that I am saying is, when you are writing something in your biodata, you have to be prepared with all possible cross questions on anything that you are writing. So a good approach can be that aim to finalize your biodata by around 27th of October. Then spend some 2-3 days on thinking of cross questions that can be asked from your biodata. And by 1st or latest 2nd November, send your biodata to RBI. And while you are preparing your biodata, please keep in mind that it will require several rounds of drafting. It will not happen correctly in just one round. First, you might write something. Then when you are forming questions on it, you might feel, "Arey yaar, ye wala point, let me just leave this out." Right? So these things will happen. There will be several rounds that you will have to spend on your biodata. So do not worry about it. This is a natural process. If regarding the biodata you want to discuss anything, please feel free to get back. If it is something general, you can write a message on the group. If it is something personal and you do not want to write on the group, you can still send us a personal message also. Okay, so now let's move to the next point. Next, we should have a good understanding about RBI. The website contains a lot of information. We have to pick selectively, make a note of it, and then remember it for interview's purpose. Every employer wants an employee who is very serious about the organization. An employee who understands the work being done at the organization and hence wants to be a part of it. For example, what is the mission of an organization, vision of an organization, how many departments are there in an organization, which animal can be seen in the insignia of an organization, what does it represent. All such basic information you should possess when you are going for the interview of any organization. So even for RBI, you should aim to gather all relevant information. You can also be asked about the functions of Reserve Bank of India, departments, organization structure, how many deputy governors are there, how many executive directors are there, committees, for example, Monetary Policy Committee. You should know it is formed under which act. You should know how many members are there in total. What is the name of external members? All these things you are expected to know. The documents published by RBI are an important source of information regarding the functions of RBI and the kind of work which is being done. Hence, we have to go through them selectively and smartly. What do I mean by that? See, first you have to understand, or at least try to guess, what kind of questions can be asked from these publications. For that, you can even refer to the previous year's interview transcripts. When you go through them, you would realize कि questions ऐसे पूछे गए हैं जिससे पैनलिस्ट सिर्फ ये जज करना चाहते हैं कि आपने पढ़ी भी हैं ये सब जो पब्लिकेशन है आरबीआई के, एटलीस्ट कुछ पब्लिकेशंस भी पढ़ी हुई है या नहीं पढ़ी हैं कोई भी. दे डू नॉट वांट कैंडिडेट जो कहीं से समरी पढ़कर आए हैं उनकी. तो क्वेश्चंस हैव बीन सच दैट इन सो एंड सो पब्लिकेशन what was the first chapter's name or title, or in so and so research paper or report they can ask a question about a particular type of graph. To summarize, we are going for the interview at RBI, so we have to make an effort to collect as much information about RBI as feasible given the time constraint. Let's move to the next one now. Next, they can ask questions about contemporary issues or current affairs related to RBI's domain. And remember, RBI's domain is vast. Anything related to Indian economy and sometimes even world economy can be a part of RBI's domain. To begin with, they might want to know how you follow the data on Indian economy. So there can be two approaches. First, you just use the newspaper to follow Indian economy. That means if inflation or IIP data or national income estimates have been released, you just read that article which is published in a particular newspaper and that's it. Second approach can be that you may go to the actual document and then analyze it from your own perspective. So if I want to know whether you do this or not, then I can ask you a question accordingly. Now, of course, it is not practical to go to the original documents for each of the data points. But still, they can just ask you which data is released by which organization, just to get an idea of, do you ever follow this process or do you never do it? Even if you follow this process once or twice, you would know where a particular data is available. For example, estimates of agriculture production. If you have gone and searched for that data, even once, you will have an idea of where it is available. Whether it is released by MOSPEEP, whether it is released by Agri Ministry, whether it is released by any other organization. They can also ask you opinion-based questions on anything that is going on in the economy. For example, old pension scheme versus the new pension scheme. They can also ask you outlook of Indian economy or its different sectors. So through this, what would they be trying to judge? Maybe just that whether you follow the reports being released by different organizations. For example, many a times IMF brings out some report or some study. Many a times data is released by other organizations also. Bi-monthly, the meeting of Monetary Policy Committee is held, and when the documents related to that are made public, you will see that even that gives an outlook of different sectors of the economy. So RBI may want to just understand whether you actually follow those documents or not at all. And similarly, they can question you on any topic related to RBI's domain, and some of them may not be very easy to explain. For example, the difference between rear and near. Most candidates already have a rough idea about it. But if we do not prepare it specifically, then there is a high probability that many candidates will not be able to explain the difference between the two. Similarly, there can be many topics. This is not an attempt to give an exhaustive list of these topics. We are just mentioning a few topics. We will update this list as we go along. Bottom line is that we have to make a list of topics. We have to then make a list of questions that can be asked from these topics and prepare them before the interview. Now let's move ahead. And of course, the subjects that we have studied for phase 1 and phase 2 examination, question can also be asked from there. In most interviews, questions from macroeconomics, Indian economy, and econometrics are more common. On the other hand, questions from microeconomics and other subjects, although have been asked and can be asked, but they are relatively less common as compared to questions from these subjects. They can also ask you questions like whether a particular concept or theory that you have studied under a particular subject, does it apply to real life under present circumstances. Here they can also ask you questions about some research methodology. They can give you a particular situation and then they can ask you, if you were to conduct a particular study, how will you approach it? They can also ask you questions about the tools whose knowledge you possess. For example, they can ask if you know a statistical software already. So this is a broad discussion of what to prepare and how to prepare. Now let's go ahead and discuss about practice. Now this is a broad discussion of what to prepare and how to prepare. Now let's go ahead and discuss about practice. At this time, many people would be offering mock interviews for you, and you already understand the reasons. So without any hesitation, जहाँ आपको ठीक लगे, you go and appear for mock interviews and do enough practice before the actual interview. Wherever you give mock interviews, please aim to understand two things. First, you should understand the things that you are doing right, and second, you should understand what things you are not doing very right. In other words, where you need to improve. And if possible, some discussion on how you can bring about that improvement. If you do not undertake this analysis, in my opinion, mock interviews will not be useful. Also, please keep in mind that at many places when you appear for mock interviews, you will be awarded some marks. My suggestion is that do not get too influenced by the marks that you have scored. अगर अच्छे आए तो बहुत खुश मत होना, अगर बहुत बुरे आए तो उसको मतलब ऐसे मत लेना कि बहुत नॉन करेक्टेबल कुछ हो गया हो. Not like that. So if you score well in the interview, still go through these points and aim for improvement. If you do not score well in any mock interview, see where you land and try to improve. Do not reach an inference such as कि mock interview में इतने marks आए हैं तो final में इतने marks आएंगे. Such inferences do not work out. You are giving mocks only to understand your strengths and weaknesses and improve upon your weaknesses. Next, I'll tell you what is our plan regarding mock interviews. We intend to hold a minimum of 2 sessions for each candidate who needs them. One of these sessions will be on biodata or basic HR questions. And the second session will be about topic from current affairs, which we are going to take as Indian agriculture sector. The idea is to break down your interview preparation into a few components that we listed earlier. So this session will be on biodata and HR related issues, and this session, its objective will be to understand how to approach any particular topic when we are preparing it for interview. And once we learn how to approach any topic for interview preparation, we can replicate the same and prepare all other topics from the interview's point of view. After these 2 sessions, if any candidate feels that they need more practice with us, subject to availability of time, we can try and schedule more sessions. But we will be working with deadlines. For example, for this session on biodata, we will be starting it around 29th of October, and this will be going on till around 5th of November. After 5th of November, we will not be taking any sessions from biodata on HR. So during this period, we have to decide a mutually convenient date and time and appear for an online session. Similarly, for the second session, let's keep the deadline as around 10th of November. Okay, even for the first one, let's keep the deadline as 10th of November. The process of scheduling this session, we will inform on the group. Now I want to end this video by giving you some suggestions. First, please do not carry any inhibitions with you. Things like, अरे मेरा तो gap year है, मैं तो so and so college से हूँ, मेरा phase 1 या phase 2 में वो वाला question छूट गया था या गलत हुआ था, तो मेरे तो phase 1 या phase 2 में marks कम ही आए होंगे. Please understand that no candidate has a perfect profile. There are some gaps in the interview or in the profile of each candidate. Even then, some candidates do score very high marks and some candidates do not end up scoring very high marks. So we have to learn from our strengths, try to strengthen our weaknesses and aim to do our best. पहले से किसी को पता नहीं होता कि उसके 75 आने वाले हैं, बट इन रियलिटी बच्चों के आते हैं, सो आपके भी आ सकते हैं. इसलिए डू नॉट कैरी एनी इनहिबिशंस विद यू, जस्ट ट्राई टू डू योर बेस्ट. सेकेंड, प्लीज डू नॉट स्टार्ट डे ड्रीमिंग कि हम ऑफिसर बन जाएंगे तो हम ऐसे करेंगे, यहाँ घूमेंगे, ऐसे रहेंगे. डोंट डू ऑल दीज थिंग्स हैव नो मीनिंग एट दिस स्टेज. There are about 90 candidates going for interview, and out of these, at most 38 will be selected. So like phase 1 and phase 2, there is a lot of competition. Hence, without spending any time on futile things, we only have to spend time on our preparation and practice. And last, please understand that we have many things to cover and the time is limited. So we will have to prioritize and decide where we want to invest our limited time. Hence, depending upon your personal strengths and weaknesses, plan how you want to go about interview preparation. And needless to add, if at any stage you feel that you want to discuss anything with us, please do not hesitate to get in touch. So we stop here in this video and see you in mock sessions.